Hey, Asad, that was quick. Sorry, I jumped straight into it. We're live across LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram right now. And I've got
Man.
the one and only Asad Zaman, who is the CEO of Sales Talent Agency, one of the most successful sales recruitment agencies on the planet. He is also the co-host of Top Line podcast, which he does in partnership with Sam Jacobs, who is the CEO and founder of Pavilion, another good friend of both of us, and is also going to be on the show in a few weeks. I'm James Ski. I'm now a best-selling author, thanks to everybody
Let's
that came out to
go.
the launch. But Asad, today's about you, my friends, and this is called the LinkedIn Teardown because we are going to tear down your LinkedIn profile, and we're going to show people the world who you are. But before we show people LinkedIn and your profile, tell us who you are, what you represent, and what you care about.
It's really good to be here, and congratulations on becoming a best-selling author, number one. That's brilliant. In terms of what I do, so I run Sales Talent Agency. We are a group of craftspeople who help tech companies build their go-to-market teams. We've been at it for about 17 years. We've learned a lot along those 17 years. And how we've evolved is we are now a firm that focuses on North America and Europe as our primary markets for helping tech companies, mostly companies that are post-product market fit, all the way to publicly traded companies. 30% of our clients are publicly traded, 70% are privately held. We help them hire anyone from a CRO to a BDR and everything in between across these various functions. We've done it for 1,500 companies. We've facilitated $1 billion in compensation. We've learned a lot along the way. And then, as you mentioned a bit earlier, when on the side, I also co-host Top Line. I write our newsletter, and I feel very privileged to get to hang out with Sam and AJ on a weekly basis to do this.
Fantastic. So, I'd love to understand your journey actually into staffing or recruitment. What do you call it over there? How did you get into it? Where did you come from? Where did you start? And then we're going to jump onto this wonderful profile that you've put together.
How did I get into recruitment? I was in university. I came from Pakistan. So I grew up in Pakistan. I came here for university to Toronto. I was studying public policy. I thought I would either go into government or I would go into law or do something of that sort. And I was trying to make money along the way and found myself into a sales job. And that just opened a new world of opportunities to me. And it was something I really enjoyed. I loved selling. And that little randomly finding that path defined the rest of my career, which is fascinating. So from there, I founded a couple of companies in university. And when I was graduating, I needed to go and find a job. To become a citizen over here, you have to spend some time working at a company. So I needed to find a job. I never thought I'd be a great employee. I always thought I was more focused on building companies or doing something of that sort. So I was a bit anxious at the time. And I really did some soul searching and realized, what do I enjoy doing? Up till then, the three places I'd spent time was product, sales, and then thinking about people in each of those functions. And between sales and product, I preferred sales. And so I thought, if I can help tech companies hire salespeople, that would be brilliant. And luckily, there was a company locally called Sales Talent Agency that had been started about 7 years before. And so I reached out to them and I really liked what they were up to. And I convinced them to hire me, and they haven't been able to get rid of me ever since.
Well, fantastic. Great story and great to hear. I actually really like that it's Sales Talent Agency. It says what it does on the tin.
Yeah, right there.
You don't have to think about it. Like it makes it easy. So many tech companies these days, you have no idea what they do.
Yeah, what's interesting about the name is that so CAA is the point of inspiration for STA. So CAA is Creative Artist Agency, and STA is Sales Talent Agency. I think the complexity for both of them became that as the businesses matured, what they did went beyond just what that initial letter and their name says. So for Sales Talent Agency, we now do all of go-to-market. For Creative Artist Agency, they have sports people that they represent, right? So it does give you an interesting challenge over there, and that's, I think, why companies move from the full name to the abbreviated version, which we'll probably end up doing as well. But yeah, the name has a soft spot in my heart.
I love it. So let's go on to your LinkedIn profile. I've got it up here. And what I would say about it immediately is it's clean and lean in a good way. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. My first question is your photo looks very recent. If it isn't, you haven't aged, so good for you.
It's not. So that's good.
So okay, you don't need to comment, but it looks good. Out of interest, this is a lot of real estate now, and I appreciate you've got the strong association with Pavilion. You host or co-host Top Line. You're on to season 2. Nothing in this real estate up here talks about your sales talent agency or joint branded. Is that on purpose, or have you thought about that?
I guess all of it, like, it's I like what you're doing because it's an interesting conversation to have. I guess it all goes back to like where I am with LinkedIn. You know, I have been off LinkedIn now for the last month and a half.
Okay.
In the last week or 2 weeks, I've started signing back on. And the reason for that was that after becoming a recruiter, for every day for 10 years, I signed on to LinkedIn. And I really like LinkedIn. I'm an introverted guy. I'm not very active across socials, but I do really appreciate LinkedIn. It's such an important part of my craft, and it's a network that I find fascinating. But I did find myself needing a bit of a break. And part of that was I felt that with Top Line, we've got a podcast and a newsletter that takes a lot of my time and energy, and I love doing it. I really like those channels of content. Like, I love the podcast. I love the newsletter. I don't think I have ever really been super intentional about LinkedIn or thoughtful, and hence found an approach to the creator side of LinkedIn that I really loved. And that's not a LinkedIn problem. That's a me problem. Like, I just never gave it enough attention and energy to like find that angle. And so I think a lot of this, as we go through it, wouldn't be like super intentional, which is the reason I took a break, because I said, let's take a minute, let's step away and then come back with the right energy, and then do it right. And I think doing it right is less about like, I want to be the biggest creator, I want the most followers. Like, it's more about, if you're doing something, you're doing it with a strategy that has been thought out and made sense. And with content, the only way to do content well is to really want to do the thing that you're doing there. And you have to find an approach and an angle that you can fall in love with. And I never really gave it enough attention to figure that out. So now I hope to. So to your question, not really being super thoughtful about that banner. Just was there. You know, people might look at the follow count and be like, oh, there's a little bit of followers there. I got my followers where you could burp on LinkedIn and get 1,000 followers. Like, this was not earned in any like massive way. I've been on it for 10 years, and there was a time where there was just such a deficiency of content compared to the demand for it that you could just be there and you could win. So not a lot of intention, not a lot of thought. I like Top Line. We had a new banner. I popped it up and moved on.
well, no, but this is why I've taken this step with what I call, you know, our space is revenue, sales, marketing, right? And I'm getting the world's best creators or experts in that space. You might not be a creator super influential like Adam Robinson or Sam Jacobs has now become, but you're in the space and you have influence, like it or not. So you decide what you want to do with it. And I think what people have valued from this, like Tom Hunt was on the show actually the other day. He runs a podcast agency, and you know, he's blown up this year, but because he posts selfies. And if you look at the teardown with him, for anyone listening, you know, but he has a framework. He has a reason for creating things. You can tell you're not super active because a lot of what you've posted, as you say, before your break or when you've come back is reposts,
Yeah.
Reposts require little to no effort, though, right?
Yeah,
So
literally. Like it's more so to help the other person than anything else. Like I just like when I see something I like, I'm like, okay, because I liked that about Twitter. I think like if I look to the platforms that I really enjoyed, Twitter was a platform that I really enjoyed. And I really liked the retweet functionality of Twitter. And it started becoming a thing on LinkedIn recently, where you notice that if you look at the LinkedIn algorithm and where it provides what it's prioritizing, one of the things it does is a retweet without a comment associated with it is good for the person that posted it. And so if I see something now from a creator, specifically from a creator who I'm like, this person's putting in some effort to put this thing out. It's not like, here we grow again, I'm hiring another person. Like, not that type of boring stuff, but like somebody who's been thoughtful. Like, if you look at the guy that I retweeted recently, he had a really interesting, like, Vin. I have no idea who Vin is. I've never met him, but I thought this was a really well done short. And the one thing Topline has taught me is that content is really hard. And actually, the longer you have to talk, so the podcast that you and I are doing today and we do with Topline, it's easier because you have more time to explain things. You can kind of meander through a point and get it across, and you have tonality and expression to be able to back up your point. When you're writing a newsletter, I write a 1,000-word editorial once a week. That's much harder to me. For me specifically, writing is harder, writing well is hard. I don't like the style of writing where it reads like a microwave manual. Like I like writing with a little bit of uh, little like edge to it, and then you have to find an angle and a point and make it and distill it down in a really sharp way. That's really hard. So if you take that and you say what Vin did over here, he's got a 1 minute video. People don't realize how hard 1 minute videos are. They're probably, to me, that's the hardest form of content. So when I see somebody doing it and I like it, I think it's the easiest thing as a community to do to support other creators. Is it's good for them. It doesn't make a big difference to you, but you should do it for them because it will give them a little bit more juice behind the
of
algorithm.
course, but the question, Asad, I think this is why I'm boiling it down. I'm going to challenge you a little bit here
Yeah,
now on
please.
LinkedIn teardown here. Like, that is great, and I acknowledge that, and there's value in that, definitely for the co-creator, and you're supporting the wider community. But what are you doing for sales talent agency, your core business as a CEO, in terms of being a thought leader beyond top line in terms of creating your content? So if we use this time now, the next few minutes to think about, okay, what does Asad represent, and what does 2025 look like for you and your business? What type of thought leadership content are you going to bring, or do you want to bring? Because you're creating, like, I'm sure there's a lot of great value in what you create on top line, and you say you do a newsletter that goes out, but you don't even have a newsletter on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm the quirky artist who doesn't like promote himself too much. Listen, my newsletter is still 50 something thousand subscribers that are right within my ICP. So it's actually bigger than the LinkedIn profile, and it's probably where I spend more time and energy because of the reach it has. And
Just repurpose it.
Yeah, I find repurposing to be almost too easy and hence not cool enough. Like I think repurposing content is the lazy person's approach to social.
Well, I mean, look, if that's your mindset, I can't. I'm
You
not.
know what I mean, right? Like that's what I'm saying. Like I'm a little too idealistic about how I do things, but it works for me so far. The other thing, James, that's interesting is I've been in this craft of recruitment for 10 years. And in 10 years, one of the things that happens when you think about what is brand, because everything that people are doing on social right now is for the purpose of brand. So here's a lesson I've learned, which is brand is basically what people say about you when you're not there. And I think the biggest thing about brand is the work that you do and the people you meet and the craft that you're in. And 10 years in, um, that is pretty substantial when you combine that with the podcast, and which is top 2% globally, the newsletter, which has massive reach, keeps me quite busy. Busy to a point where, as a firm, we're not demand constrained, we're supply constrained in terms of our ability to solve. So it's also like it gives me the leverage to be able to say, I'll do it the way I want to do it, when I want to do it, how I want to do it. But I'm not desperate to be on it and find the easy angles to it. Like when I do it, all the hard work up till now has given me the leverage to say, if and when I do it, I'll do it in a way that I feel happy about versus just being there for the sake of being there, which is, I think, what I was doing before. I was there for the sake of doing it. And the break has been really nice because it's clarified to me that if I do it, I'll do it in a way that I want to do it and I can sustain doing it. Because I think as a creator, if you don't love what you're doing, then what's the point?
I mean, look, and I totally agree. It's something I reference in my book about sustainable success, because ultimately, especially in in the recruitment game or the sales game, it's hard yards, it's up and down, it's rough, it's a roller coaster. But whatever you choose to do, it needs to be sustainable. And
Yeah.
part of the reason for me launching a show like this, and I put in like 48 hours, I booked like 40 interviews with people because I'm re-motivated, I'm re-energized. But if I wasn't,
You got an
people,
angle now, right? You're like, hey, I can do this thing that is uniquely me.
exactly.
And I can do it really well. Like, I think that's also why I deprioritized LinkedIn for a while, because the newsletter, I run a pretty sizable firm. And then in addition to that, we do the podcast and the newsletter. And the newsletter was the newest part of our strategy. So the newsletter started about, we're on edition number 23 or 24. We do it every week. So that's maybe like a little over a quarter, right? And I write it like start to end, like I write it myself. And if we do something, we want it to be really good. We want to compete for it to be the best in the market. And I think one of the things that's been helpful is really narrowing down and saying, let's start something. Let's not overcomplicate it when we start. I'm okay starting stuff at a good level. Like, it just has to be good. It shouldn't be depressingly bad, but if it's good, start. And once you start, now you have this like little bit of time to iterate every week to make it great. And for that, you do need to narrow the aperture into that thing that you're doing and just try to do it really, really well. Again, like, I am not a professional creator or somebody that is, I think, an expert in this area. So everybody should take my thoughts with like a massive punch of salt. But that's how I view it, is like, if you're doing content and you are now spread across a couple of different mediums, focus on the newest medium, make it really, really good before adding another one in. Because what I sometimes find people do is they're in too many places, and what they start doing is just repurposing things across the channels. And it is a lazy strategy. Like, to me, and I get it, like I get why people do it, but there is a laziness to it. And that laziness is why when you see a person who has a podcast today and they take a clip of the podcast and they post it on LinkedIn, how is the engagement on that, right? It's not very good. And the little clip of like that 1 minute clip, or even the trailer to an episode that people post, people that have hundreds of likes on the normal post, on this one have like a handful. There's a reason for that, right? Like, there's a reason why engagement's different on things. It's an algorithm and community telling you something. And so to me, the lesson is, if you're doing something, you have to understand the channel really well. And sometimes this repurposing thing, I find, doesn't work all that well.
Okay, I hear you, and that's definitely useful insight for people. So tell us, as we come to the end of this conversation, what is your either view or ambition with LinkedIn for 2025? If I have this conversation with you 12 months time again, what do you think you're going to be saying? What do you think you're going to be talking about?
I think, and I'm really curious to get your thoughts on what you think LinkedIn is evolving into. But when I look at LinkedIn, I think it's a lost social network that is based on the social graph is based on connections, which I think is really interesting, right? Like, all the other social networks have moved towards like this algorithmic approach. And LinkedIn is still primarily, I think, a social graph. And I think that's really interesting. I think LinkedIn has traditionally had a deficiency of supply of good content versus demand. And I think that deficiency has reduced, but it is still there. Like, I still think there is more demand for good content than supply. And I think it's introducing some new formats of content that have been prioritized. Obviously, short form videos is an example of that. And so I think right now where I'm at is probably still for the next quarter, I'm not going to be very active on LinkedIn. I'll be a community participant. So I do want to learn, because I did find that when I was away for a month and a half, there was a little bit of like the zeitgeist that was missing in my mind, which like I noticed was it. It was coming into play when I was writing or putting the docket for the podcast together. I was like, oh, like when I was on LinkedIn, there was just a little bit more signal that I was on top of. So I want to be there to benefit from the conversation and be an active contributor to the community. And maybe a quarter or so after that, once I feel really good about the newsletter, I'll click into LinkedIn and see what formats are working well. And out of the ones that are working well, which one feels interesting to me, and probably try to create some energy and enthusiasm to be active there. I really find short form very difficult, and maybe that's something that I'll click into a little bit because I like doing things that are really hard and uncomfortable. I think you learn and grow doing it, and that would be the most uncomfortable thing I could do, is lean into short form video of some sort. It's the most, like, out of everything I can think of, it's the most uncomfortable thing. So
Well,
if you see me there, you'll probably see me doing something like that.
well, then congrats if you get there, because to be honest, I think with the rise of AI and text-based AI gen content, your real differentiator is video.
Yeah.
Because even though, yes, you can replicate it with AI, the quality, the reality of it is that video is the differentiator. You can see the YouTube continues to explode. TikTok is obviously a mega platform now. LinkedIn hasn't figured out video because it wasn't a native platform for video.
Yeah.
It's never going to quite get it. But
you know how LinkedIn tries things and removes them? Are you bullish long term on video within LinkedIn, like and specifically short form video?
Yes, but informative short form video. When LinkedIn tried stories, I never felt stories was right.
Yeah, stories felt weird, like off a bit.
It
What
was
about like the combination of short form and not long form, but slightly longer, right? Like, because I find that there's this interesting dynamic going on where if you have a video that's like a minute 30, it goes into like short form distribution.
Yeah.
Then there's some people that have non-vertical videos that are a bit longer, and those don't go into distribution on the short form side. What do you think is like, if you're speaking to other people and giving advice, how do you balance these two? Should one go all in on one, or is this a world where you do one for one reason, but there's a specific value to sometimes also popping in these slightly longer videos that don't go into distribution?
Well, you're not going to like my answer because you kind of already suggested that, cutting up long form video into short is not ideal for the algorithm. But I don't see really the another way, because what, otherwise you're duplicating your effort and your energy in some ways. Now I see the benefit of locking yourself in a studio for a day, doing your short videos and then distributing over time, but then it's not real time. And I think content always benefits from real time, but that's where effort is.
That's
when you run a business like you do at the scale you do, maybe yes, you can have a 10 a.m. meeting with yourself to do your 1 minute video, but it's not easy to do.
Yeah, you can't do it on a daily basis. Like, it has to be, you have to produce them in a batch. Like, you have to do it like every couple of weeks at best. Like, you cannot.
But this is it. This is it, Asad. But then it's like, that's why I'm suggesting. Do you, with the Top Line podcast, do you video or is it just audio?
That's why I have this beautiful setup.
Well, yeah, but there you go. So, if you use something like
Opus. Yeah.
Have you done much with it, Opus?
We've done a little bit. We should do more. We're just strangely artistic about content. We just like we produce and we pop and we grow quite well because of, I don't know why. But we don't do a lot of this repurpose. We should, like, you're completely right. We should create a bunch of short form clips and pop them up and do all of that. It's good advice. So do you think the purpose of the short form videos is to get maximum eyeballs and increase follower counts? And then sometimes a longer form video that won't go out to the ether the same way, but will be shown to your audience, is to deepen the connection and your perception with your existing follower count? Is that how people should view that?
I think you nailed it, because look, right, we're live, we're streaming this. This is streamed globally, right? However, over the next 24, 48 hours, this will probably get hundreds of views on LinkedIn. On YouTube, I have a very small following. On X, it's non-existent right now. Instagram, non-existent. I've had a few people come on, I can see, and they don't want to interact because they're not sure, of this style of content. However, my view is, even if people don't spend more than 5 seconds on a long form video or a short form video, the fact that you exist on video increases their belief and trust in you as a brand and as a thought leader.
Because they see a person, they build a relationship with. I do notice that. Listen, I think that's the beauty of content. And the one thing I would say to anyone that's listening is that it is uncomfortable to put content out there. You're putting your ideas and your thoughts out into the world, and it's really, and the more distribution you get, the harder it becomes, because there's a pressure that comes with it. But in a world that's becoming more and more competitive, where the competition for attention from whoever you're trying to get attention from is increasing at a rate that I don't think people really comprehend, one way to really stand out is to have a point of view and to put that point of view out there. People develop a relationship with you as the individual behind that point of view and with the point of view itself. And there's a saying in marketing that if people feel that you understand the problem better than anyone else, they'll want your point of view on the solution. And content is the best way to do that.
I totally agree. Well, look, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed it. To our listeners, let's have a round of applause for Asad Zaman, who is the CEO of the Sales Talent Agency, one of the leading, if not leading, go-to-market sales agency in the world, and also a co-host and host of the Top Line podcast with Pavilion. And you've been listening to James Ski, who does the LinkedIn Teardown weekly. We bring our guests and we tear down their LinkedIn profile. So let us know in the comments who you would like to see. Asad, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us and being on the show today.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.